77 is on the line. This is Daniel Mason, who's all the way from Milnthorpe. He's an electrician at Terry Allen Electrical. So we'll give them a plug. 77 is quick. We've got 95 miles an hour to the track. 26.18. 26.18. Still well off the FTD of car 91, 23.67 on the first of the time run. This is the second of the time runs. So Daniel Mason, it's a Radical Pro Sport, totally standard on carbs. It's a 1300 Hayabusa and it's dry sumped. He's travelling to events with Andrew Jackson in the Riot kit and Gordon Riley in the Elise, so they're getting around a bit. He's had 3 class wins from 4 events so far. So Daniel Mason in car 77, car 80 now setting off. And car 80 is Andrew Jackson, who's a kitchen fitter with Mark Lee Kitchens. This it's a kit and chassis, Bingley Engineering Geometry, 89 miles an hour through the trap, and it's got to 27.76. It's a Honda VTEC Super 2000, 240, and it only weighs 800 kilograms. I'm surprised it weighs as much as that actually, because though it should be a lot lighter. It's the 4th event in this car. He's done Aintree, Teesside and Barbon last time. Car 85 on the line now is Mr. Phil Nelson, regular here. He's been competing for 17 years, competed on Barbon many, many times in those 17. 82 miles an hour for the Formula Ford, 28.82, that's a nice palindromic time, 28.82 for car 85. If it had been 82, that would be a wonderful score, wouldn't it? But that's Phil Nelson all the way from Lymm, who's a project operations manager. It's a Hawk Formula Ford, a DL2B, built in 1971. Standard Formula Ford spec. 86, Mr. Graham Carter Kerwin in the ex-Fraser Graham car. 82 miles an hour. There you are, that's 82 on it, it's exactly the same speed. And he gets 28.72. So he'll be happy with that, you see, because he's just taken a little bit out of his fellow class. So Phil Nelson, the gauntlet is there now. Interesting, both exactly the same speed. So that's a Formula Ford flat out, 82 miles an hour. So they will go quicker than that, but it is uphill. Car 90 is Mr. Colin Birkbeck in this 405 miles an hour, not the critical C. Colin absolutely floors it out the hairpin, 24.01, not quite enough, but Colin absolutely floored that. Colin's an electrical retailer from Penrith. He's only competed actually for 10 years. His other hobby is golf. Oh well. Colin actually got FTD in 2012. So Gary Thomas now, this was the quickest car we saw this morning. He goes through 100, he's slower through the trap, but that doesn't necessarily quick for hairpin. 20 seconds for hairpin. 23.89, not quite quick enough. 2200ths slower. It was a fair bit slower through the trap. He did 111 on the trap the first time, so trying slightly different. Maybe he's changed the gear ratio slightly. But that's Gary Thomas in his force. It's silver with red stripes to cover the scratches. I like it. 95, Jim McDermott, 100 miles an hour through the trap. This is the ex-John Shakespeare car. Jim gets 24.20. Getting used to the car. A bit more power than Jim's previous cars. Jim actually started doing his speed hill climbing in his ex-rally car. And a Peugeot. And he's used various things. He's had a couple of OMSs, but this is an ex-factory one used to run by Steve Owen. That's the OMS, so Steve M. Owen is where he got the OMS from. Pete Hamilton and John Chatsfield got FTD in that car last year. So come on, Jim, no pressure. 81 on the, what's on the line, he's left the line a while ago, 10 seconds ago in fact. Approaching somewhere around Richmond. clocks 105 through the trap. David Seaton from Westminster. Boosted out the hairpin, but it's 25.18. David Seaton in the bill beam. Sharing that with Douglas Thompson. David is MD of a transport company.
Right next to time.
He's been competing for 30 years. He started off as a youngster. And that, as we said before, has got a 5-litre Beamer engine in it, an M5, so a fair bit of power. And there's a complete contrast. 119 clocks, starting 51 miles an hour through the trap, but they have no power, of course. They think they've got about 35 horsepower. Out the hairpin, 40.40. Car 100 is another of our Bert Hagley competitors. Keith Benningfield, I beg your pardon, not the Bert Hagley one, beg your pardon, I'm jumping the gun a bit here. This is the MG. The TC, 1946, 70 miles an hour, 32.20 for Keith Benningfield, who's driving his hobby. He's been competing for 45 years. The car was built for circuit racing back in 1978. It's supercharged, has 120 horsepower, 77 miles an hour through the trap for 101, which is one or two Morgans, looking glorious. 32.77 for Martin McHugh, who's pretty close to home. He lives in Middleton. That's the Kirby Lonsdale Middleton, not the North Manchester Middleton. Farming and classic and vintage cars are his hobbies. Now we go on to Bert Hagley's 102. There is Keith Thomas. That's not the Bert Hagley, I'll get it right eventually. This is the Buckler. Keith looks at the clock, 38.26, 56 miles an hour through the trap. Keith, who's the owner of a, quote, very small village garage in Branthwaite in northwest Cumbria. Here's the lovely Aston DB6. And the DB6 has decided to drive around the outside on the grass. He's parked it on the